Hello and welcome to r/AskReddit by Reddit. Today's question is, which is the worst single decision in history ever made by a person? Mao Zedong pest campaign. He basically told his nation to take pots and pans to kill all the sparrows. However, the ecosystem was disturbed and the locust population skyrocketed. Seeds. He thought that planting seeds 1 meter in the ground would result in greater roots and better harvest. He also thought that putting tons of seeds in one compact area would cause a better harvest. All the seeds died, however. Around 30 million or so died from famine under his rule. Hey, look at the other nations industrializing. Let's smelt all our metal to build better infrastructure. What? It creates pig iron, which is super unstable and impure, therefore being ultimately useless? Oops, Mao. The more I read about Mao, the more baffled I am. He seems like not just an incompetent ruler, but just like a straight up stupid man. In his youth, Mao briefly worked in the library of a university and was mocked by the students, therefore being uneducated. He held that grudge for a hell of a long time, as he basically banned higher education when he came to power. There was a 10-year period when literally nobody in the country was allowed to enter college. Yep, my grandparents were sent directly to the farm after school, no college for them. My late grandparents decided to flee to America when Mao came into power. They were pretty opinionated when it came to the Great Leap off a cliff. The decision by the Scottish to invade England during Black Death must be up there. Alan Savory, the ecologist who killed 40,000 elephants because it was believed that grazing was causing the desertification of Africa, only to find out later that elephants were essential to prevent desertification. In a thread filled with all sorts of villains and dumb ducks, this is the one dude who's making me disproportionately mad. You'd be happy to know that he learned from his mistake and went on to create an elephant sanctuary, if I recall correctly. He's a leader in the regenerative agriculture movement now, working to educate people about the necessity of ruminants for healthy grasslands. It's shocking that A. Someone believed elephants caused deserts. B. Killed 40,000 elephants due to that belief. C. Learned that they were wrong, so started a sanctuary, and most importantly D. It all happened so recently that that dude is still alive. I thought this would have been someone in 1700 to 1800s trying to shitastically preserve the colonies of their European nation through dumb ideas. No. Holy moly. It was in my lifetime that 40k elephants were killed due to not understanding deserts. I'm really glad that dude learned from his mistake and was willing to accept fault for the mistake. Eastman Kodak deciding not to go forward with their own newly invented digital cameras and instead sticking with film because it made them so much money at the time. Maybe not the worst, but maybe Ronald Wayne. He was a co-founder of Apple along with Steve Jobs and Steve Wozniak in 1976. Just 12 days after forming the company, he sold his shares for $800. He owned 10% of the company, which would be worth $80 billion. 80 billion today. Source. Don't know how accurate this is, but the story still stands. Maybe the worst business decision ever made was by Xerox with their Alto computer. Xerox invented the graphical interface modern computers use. Desktop, folders, copy-paste, etc. They basically invented the modern computer in the 70s. But the problem was, The people in charge at the time were businessmen without any technical knowledge, so they didn't realize what they had. They did nothing with it and gave it away to universities and showed other companies. The famous story is that Steve Jobs saw this and within 5 minutes realized this was the way computers would work in the future. He copied it. Because Xerox didn't patent their invention and didn't do anything with it, and the rest is history. Xerox could have been Apple or Microsoft. Or both. They could have had a monopoly on the entire PC industry. Almost every company uses Windows in their offices. I think 80 or 90% of consumers uses Windows. That could have been Xerox. They had the tech maybe 10 years before anyone else. They could have been the most valuable company of all time, but they just gave it away. Hong Xiuquan declared the Taiping Rebellion after he had a nervous breakdown from failing the imperial examinations. He proclaimed that he was the brother of Jesus Christ. 20-30 million people died. Well, the decision of Inalchuq, the governor of the Khwarezmian city of Otara, to attack Genghis Khan's trade caravan was pretty bad. Khan was famous as a ruthless warlord, not the sort of guy you want to piss off. But maybe they could have got away with it. Genghis sent 3 ambassadors to negotiate a settlement, which is when Muhammad II, the Shah of Khwarezm, made the really bad decision to kill one of these ambassadors and send the other 2 back without their beards as a sign of humiliation. Genghis Khan was so enraged he assembled an army and destroyed the Khwarezmian Empire, wiped out every town they had. He even rerouted a river to wipe out the village where the Shah was born, wiping it off the map. By 1120 there wasn't much of anything left. So, both Inalchuq or Muhammad II of Khwarezm qualify. Take your pick. Related. As the Mongols headed for Khwarezm, they sent a message to a vassal telling them to send men. The vassal replied, "If you need our men, you're not strong enough to be our overlord," and killed some Mongols. Once Genghis was done in Khwarezm, he punished the former vassal by ordering the complete destruction of the country. Hey, let's create a coffee machine that uses a single-use plastic cup for every cup of coffee or tea. How bad can the trash from that really be? I actually read that the creator of the K-Cup, John Sylvan, regrets inventing the pod system. How about the guy who bought 20,000 Albanian slaves, brought them to Cairo, trained them to be the greatest warriors of their time, and then got overthrown by said slave warriors because they were so well trained? Kaiser Wilhelm II firing Otto von Bismarck. Bismarck had a plan. He always has a plan. But not when an incompetent Kaiser boots him out of his means of putting his plans into action. Bismarck had everything set up perfectly, but Wilhelm II decided to duck up everything he had set up, and got into World War I for it. Seriously. People constantly bring up the assassination of Ferdinand, but this was such a bad move it should completely overshadow the powder keg of Ferdinand's death. Wilhelm II had no idea what he was getting himself into, and firing the very man responsible for Germany's rise to international power was a hell of a way to kick things off. Alright gentlemen, we've successfully fended off the Greeks for 10 years. Our great city of Troy still stands. If we keep this up, surely they will realize the siege is fruitless and return home before long. Yo captain, there's this big ass wooden horse outside, oh rad, bring it in. To be fair to the Trojans, there wasn't all that much they could do because the gods had essentially made up their minds. Laocoon was like, "Hey, this is a bad idea, and then got eaten by a giant water monster. The Trojans kind of took that as a sign that the gods clearly wanted them to bring the horse in. Plus Cassandra protested, but cursed by Apollo and all that. And the Trojans were probably fucked regardless, since Hector was dead and Achilles was back in the fighting. And extra mad because Patroclus was dead. The horse was just the death blow. Edit. Sorry, I got the timeline mixed up. Achilles was already dead at this point. Still, without Hector the Trojans really didn't have much of a chance. Especially since the Greeks had formidable soldiers who weren't Achilles, Agamemnon, Menelaus, etc. Thomas Midgley Jr. can lay claim to 3. First, he discovered and helped popularize the use of lead in petrol gasoline, causing unimaginable harm to the atmosphere and our brains. He contracted lead poisoning when working on the project, but apparently neglected to draw any conclusions from this. Second, he led the team that discovered Freon, the first chlorofluorocarbon, and helped popularize the use of CFCs in refrigeration and industrial applications, causing further unimaginable harm to the atmosphere. It's suggested that he had a greater impact on the atmosphere than any other single person in history. As for the third, well, straight from Wikipedia. In 1940, at the age of 51, Midgley contracted poliomyelitis, which left him severely disabled. He devised an elaborate system of ropes and pulleys to lift himself out of bed. In 1944, he became entangled in the device and died of strangulation. Thanks for watching. Please like and subscribe for more Reddit content.